Welcome to the Spinning Our Gears podcast. As a reminder, the issues, views, and opinions discussed on the podcast are those of the hosts and their guests and do not reflect that of any department, agency, city, municipality, state, or country. All characters and individuals discussed on the podcast should be considered fictional for entertainment value. Blue Falcons, don't go getting it twisted. This show is rated explicit and listener discretion is advised. If you aren't cool with that, hit the X and find something else. We are on all major podcast and social media platforms. The best way to get a hold of us is www.spinningourgears.com. Without any further fanfare or ado, here are your hosts, Turk, Swagger, Erica, Kenyon, and this is the Spinning Our Gears podcast. You know what time it is. Welcome back, Warriors, to another episode of the Spinning Our Gears podcast. Sorry it's been a minute, but we are back with our Holiday Mashup. You see, when it comes to holiday season, we like to take you back and do a little recap of all of the fun we had throughout the previous year. And this Holiday Mashup, we're going to start off with how we began Season 3, welcoming in two new co-hosts. It was no longer just Turk and Swagger. We also brought in Kenyon and Erica, and we had some really good times.
The story that comes to mind that always brings a smile to my face. We had, in the city that I worked in, we had some very nice housing areas. And of course, we're right next to the largest military installation in the free world. So we were a pretty good sized little community. And I got a call. I don't remember what the nature of the call was, but I do remember it had something to do with apparently some holiday decorations in the neighborhood. So I'm going to put this in perspective. I don't know that I've grown up any since then, but I think I was probably 24 or 25 when this call came in. And so it's one of the really nice neighborhoods, and I'm driving up and I'm thinking, what in the fuck is this? I don't even see, there's no Christmas decorations in the ground. And then there's some movement that catches my eye on the top of the roof. Four young officers had gotten together and pooled their money so they could live in this really nice house that was right next to Fort Hood, Texas. And one of them apparently was an engineer. And you know the deer, those beautiful lit deer that you see sometimes people, and they raise and their little muzzles, and they had kind of reconfigured it.
Oh no.
So here's one deer. Here's the rocking mechanism. And giving you a good visual. So I did what any respectful police officer, enforcer of the law would do. I backed my unit up so I could get really good footage on my cam. Apparently the neighbors who were the complainants saw me out there laughing with the four young men, and that resulted in a call to the chief's office.
So for those of you that are not watching and you're just listening, what Erica just described was two reindeer going at it in someone's front yard, basically. That's good. Anything?
No, it was that's probably one of my favorites.
Anything pop into your head, Kenyon?
So I remember a couple years ago when I was still out in Arizona. It was one of those times where I was also working on, I think this may have actually been Thanksgiving, but it could have been Christmas too, because this particular year we had my in-laws come up to our house for both holidays. And I remember sitting there at my house. We were eating dinner, and I was on duty still. I just took my lunch break out of the house, and they call me to go out to this house, and I got paired up with one of my really good buddies at the time out there, and we go out to this dude's house who apparently he was yelling at his neighbor, and that was the whole cause of it. But this dude was nuts, man. I mean, he was, one of those guys that the sky is falling, like everything's against him, everyone's watching him, looking out for him, all this kind of stuff. And so we kind of after like 15 minutes or so, we coaxed this guy out, and he scared off his wife, and there's at this point there's a potential domestic violence situation too. And we ended up having to he reached into his belt line, and he didn't end up having any weapons, but that's a no, right? So he starts reaching, and so I'm transitioning from this like nice family dinner of like having all the having fun and being all lighthearted with my family, laugh and stuff, and then like 10-15 minutes later I'm over at this house roughing this guy up against the the outside of his house, and taking him down, arresting him, and then we stick him in my patrol car, and he's like kicking the windows and the doors and all that kind of stuff. And so I just look back at that, and I laugh at it now because of like just we talk about that kind of stuff, right? How it can go from 0 to 60 so quickly.
Kenyon is absolutely right there. In this first responder career field, things change so quickly and can go from 0 to 60. We are so happy to have both Kenyon and Erica joining us on this podcast and having them as our new co-host. I think it has taken this podcast even further than it was before. I speak for Swagger when I say we welcome them with open arms onto this podcast, and we are so excited to see where we go from here in season 4 next year. Now, when it comes to going 0 to 60, mentally things went 0 to 60 for me, because the first guest we had on this year is one I never would have imagined in year 1 that we would have had. We got to welcome the one and only Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman onto the show, and he dropped so many awesome insights, so many truth bombs, as we like to call them. It was a wild ride from beginning to end.
But the lesson from that, when people are down, when things are coming unglued, it's the one with the energy. It's the one that can stand up and do that little extra bit that people look up to. So let me give you a law enforcement angle on that. Mike Neal was a fish and game officer in Arkansas. In West Memphis, Arkansas, 2 cops were murdered. And they knew who it was. It was a couple of white supremacist sovereign nation wackos, father and son. And there's this dragnet. And Mike Neal, fish and game officer from 100 miles away, driving 90 miles an hour, comes. And Mike Neal pulls into the local Walmart. And here's this vehicle they're all looking for, a white van, father and son, and the local sheriff, who was caught unarmed, a destroyed human being, didn't even run for re-election. The local sheriff and a deputy is pinned down behind their Crown Vic, their police vehicle. These 2 idiots are leaning out the driver window and the passenger window and just riddling the cop car. And Mike Neal gets on the radio with local dispatch, and he said, I found your bad guys. They got 2 of your cops pinned down in the Walmart parking lot. And dispatch kind of said, "Who are you? What are you doing?" He said, "I don't have time for this." And this has been caught on video, the Walmart parking lot video. Mm-hmm. He floors his game and fish vehicle, which has gone into the National Museum now. He floors his vehicle and he slams into the back of this van. And there's a great shot of the windshield of his vehicle with bullet holes everywhere where the bad guys are shooting back. And just 2 small circles of bullet holes where he's firing out. And he killed them both. And he had his AR there in the passenger seat, and had his own ammo, and he killed them both. An incredible feat of marksmanship and courage. And he said something really important. He said, I had a chance to talk to him, and he became the sheriff. Been in several more gunfights, shot more bad guys in the flu vaccine. An amazing guy. But he said, at the time, he told me, he said, I'm the kind of cop or the cops make fun of. He said, they don't make fun of me no more. And my message is be that cop. Be that one. Be that one that is pushing the envelope, that is running for office, that is starting a podcast. Be that one who's a jiu-jitsu black belt in the art of the firearm and masters his skills. Push that envelope. Be that one. Things are bad. Things are crazy. This is midway through Ranger School. We're food deprived. We're sleep deprived. And the one that has the energy to stand up and start a podcast, the one that has the energy to stand up and run for office or help manage the department Facebook page and put all the clips and the stuff in there. Whoever that person is, be that person. Push that envelope, and people will look to you. They will turn to you. I'm the kind of cop other cops make fun of. They don't make fun of me no more. Well, it's time to be that cop,
Right.
to be that person.
Right.
And that's my little 2 bits on leadership and serving under pressure and be that cop.
Again, if you would have told me in year 1 of this podcast, we would have someone of the caliber of Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman on the show, I would have said you're crazy. I would have thought there's no way. But it was an honor to have him on the show, to hear his insights. Just a very, very cool thing for us to have. We had a lot of cool guests this year, as you're going to see throughout the episode. But one thing I have to do is give a shout out to one of our previous guests, who's one of our sponsors, and that's the Risen Warrior Coffee Company. If you could do me a favor, go to risenwarriorcoffee.com and look at all the cool things they have going on over there, all of the cool flavors they have with their coffee, anything from their merchandise to just their message and the things they are trying to do. Use code Turk and Swagger at checkout to get 10% off your first order, but most importantly, just get some really good coffee. All right, I'm going to take you now into the next episode that we had, where Eric and I sat down and we talked about Alcoholics Anonymous when it comes to the first responder career field.
Even though there was still that part of my mind that thought I'm a cop, you guys couldn't possibly understand everything that I've been through, but I still started to develop this sense of community that I had really missed after leaving the police department. You know, those weren't just officers. They weren't just coworkers. These were my family members. This was my community. And so when I was no longer in law enforcement, I lost all of that. And 12-step programming allowed me to get that back. These people, because they actually talk a lot like cops, had no problem saying, Erica, pull your head out of your fucking ass, because if you don't put your ego down, it's gonna fucking kill you. And I listened. Thank God I finally listened. And so I started really diving in, reading the big book, working with my sponsor, working the steps. And that's led to where I'm at today, which is I don't just work the steps, I live the steps. I've had the same sponsor, the same guy. My sobriety date is March the 10th of 2013, so I'm coming up on 11 years, and he has been my sponsor throughout this entire thing. And I'm still in contact with Miss Mary, the lady that ran the shelter. In fact, I went back and I did some volunteer work over there. But when I first started, no one in law enforcement or anyone in the first responder community, not firefighters, not any of them, were talking about AA. Choir practice was still a huge thing. It was encouraged to drink. And for some people that worked.
Giving y'all a little bit of a shorter clip there for that one. I think I had to do it that way because although I encourage you to go back and listen to all of these episodes, that one in particular, Erica really does a deep dive into her story, overcoming addiction, all the way to where she's at now, helping out first responders, not only with mental health, but addiction and a lot of the things that we see and we face every single day. I just feel like it wouldn't do it justice if I gave you a longer clip. I think you should go back and listen to the whole thing there. Really good episode, really important topic, and I think you guys are going to enjoy that. I think you're going to enjoy that one. I also think you're going to enjoy the next clip that I'm going to give you, that episode. I got to welcome on another guest, and for personal reasons, I kind of geeked out a little bit with this one. We welcome the host of the Spear Talk podcast onto this show. He's a really cool guy. He's the head of security for several major bands, and he's got a couple podcasts, like I said, where I love the shows, and so it was awesome to bring him on. Go ahead and give it a listen.
I'll talk about this guest. He passed away 2 years ago. Bob Wall. He was O'Hara in Enter the Dragon.
Okay.
Martial artist. He was the guy that had the scar. If anyone don't see the movies, he had the scar. He was the right-hand henchman for the main bad guy. And he fights Bruce Lee. And his legacy, he's the real deal in terms of martial arts and like that community. But like, as he got older, he got like cranky and like very bombastic. But I love Enter the Dragon. It's like one of my favorite martial arts movies, but it's like he's one of the last few people outside of Kung Lee, or outside of, can't think of the actor's name, but still alive from that movie. And so we get set up, and this is one of my maybe top 15 episodes, or one of the first 15. And he's like, I can't fucking get this working. This link sucks. Meanwhile, he's on the link. I can hear him talking. He's like, talking shit. He goes, fuck this. These podcasts are a joke. I go, listen, Bob, you're not doing shit right now. We don't have to do this, but I put my time in. I schedule this. Like, let's do this. Like, I don't give a fuck who you are. And I gave it back to him because I was so pissed. He's like, well, give me a second. He logs off. 5 minutes later, he logs back in, apologizes. He goes, I'm just having one of these days. I'm sorry. But in that split second, I had heard from other people and seen other clips or other martial artists be like, he's kind of that guy.
Yeah.
But I was like, for selfish reasons, while I didn't want to put myself in a situation to get shitty with him, luckily I did it off camera.
Yeah.
Well, I actually have I have that bit recorded. I just never released it. But I just love the movie so much. I'm like, well, I got to do this because he's one of the last living members of this. The anniversaries, the 50th anniversary is coming up. So, yeah, it was like one time where I got super heated with a guest. And like, it's like, he wasn't a hero of mine, but it was like, it represented a movie that my youth was just still to this day. I love that movie. And so, but again, when it comes to world leaders or like actors and people, talk show people, I think they've all got good and bad days, all humans. I don't actively, one of the coolest people I met at the White House, Chris Christopherson, just amazing. And like, I'm a huge Blade fan. So his portrayal of Whistler, which is Blade's mentor and weapons guy. And then growing up as the Highwayman with Johnny Cash and in that band there with Merle and Willie Nelson. And so getting to talk to him coming through the White House where it's like he was like the most coolest. And so he walked by me and I'm like, oh, what's up, Whistler? And like it caught him off guard because obviously when you're walking into a White House, you're not thinking someone's going to name drop a character you played in Blade. But he turned around and goes, hey, what's up? I go, Mr. Christopherson, like I just want to say like, I meet a lot of people, but like you growing up and like still to this day, you're such a cool person. And then we talked about how he helped deflect for Sinead O'Connor when she was booed that one time in Madison Square Garden. Her documentary is amazing, by the way, if you want to check it out. But how he was able to like tell his crowd, hey, stop booing her. Like we just had to talk for like 15 minutes. He's going to some gala with Obama. Like all these people are there. SEALs walking by, Jay-Z, all these people walking by. And I'm just talking to him about just a normal dude. Like, he's one of the coolest interactions I've ever had. But it's one of those things where it's like you roll the dice. In that moment, he could have been like, what?
Who the fuck are you? Yeah.
It could have been like, talk to me and said, hey, this guy, he can't be talking. But you know what? I was like, dude, that's Whistler, dude.
I think you have two T-shirts sitting right there. One is Listen, Bob, and the other one's Hey, Whistler. But
yeah.
You know, I never checked in with John to see if he made a fortune off that idea and made those two T-shirts. But John's a really, really good dude. If you couldn't tell from that clip there, he's experienced a lot in life. Everything from working for the feds to now being the owner and CEO of a security company that gets to protect some very famous people and tour the entire world. And he's got some awesome stories to go with that. But most importantly, like I said, he is just a good guy on top of all of that. He didn't know me from Adam, yet he came on the show, did an episode with me, and did some other cool stuff for me on the backside that I'm not gonna broadcast, but he didn't have to do those things is the point. And the fact that he did was very, very cool. So I would appreciate it if you went back and listened to that episode and then also go check out his podcast because I think he's doing some pretty cool stuff over there. Now, we shifted gears a little bit after talking to John with Spear Talk, and I linked up with the Shield Within podcast. They are one of our, I guess you call it brother or sister podcasts that we do a lot of work with every single year. And we found that we had this commonality and this bond through the foster and adoption world. And we dove in and we had some really, I'd say, heartfelt conversations and some tough discussions about the entire foster care system and adoption as it pertains to the first responder world. I walked away wondering, was the reason she wasn't talking because of the parents? Was it because of us? Was it maybe law enforcement had taken her out of the house that she'd been in?
Right.
Right.
What got her to the point where she was either that scared or that standoffish that she wouldn't even open up to us?
Right.
And that was kind of my takeaway, realizing that you have to wear a different set of gloves, not even kid gloves, but a different set of gloves altogether if you're going to be handling and dealing adopted and foster care kids.
Right. That's very typical of my experience with this intersection of this population with law enforcement. Sometimes the kids would see, like Kelly has talked about on her show, the foster kids, the kids that became foster kids would see the police people, EMTs, whatever, as saviors. Like when they would walk in, the danger would go down, the chaos would stop, and life would start to make sense a little bit. So there are some circumstances, I can remember a girl I knew, gosh, she was probably 13, and man, when the cop would happen to be on grounds for whatever reason, she immediately would go talk to that cop. That was like that cop represented to her safety. I could go to him and I could feel safe. That's how cops were. On other cases, like you're saying, Turk, cops were the ones who came in and had to bust fights up, had to get aggressive, had to put people in handcuffs, had to become forceful in their words and in their decisions. And a lot of those kids had never seen anything like that before. And it became really scary. And it became part of the trauma. I remember the time when, and then I would get the story about mom and dad's fight, and then the cops coming in the front door and being loud and, trying to take over the scene and so forth, and it became part of the trauma. And so that absolutely is a part of it. And when you never know, man, it's like every other thing y'all do on the street.
Right.
You don't know what the fuck you're walking up to.
Right.
You don't know what they've been through, what they just went through 5 minutes ago, 5 years ago, etc. So, same thing here. You walk up on a foster kid who's run away. My God, I had dozens of foster kids run away. It almost became an expected thing. and almost at little ages. I mean, I had the first kid I ever had die in my care was in a foster home.
Wow.
And he ran away to see his mom and dad. And he was crossing, there's a little town north of here that has a really beautiful city park that's very large, has a little river running through it. And he was walking across the aqueduct across the river, and he fell and he drowned. He was 8. And this was the 4th or 5th time he had run away. He got put into foster care at 6. He had lived in 3 or 4 by the time he was 8. And he just wanted to go home. That's it. So cops for him were somebody to run from. They were going to take him back to the foster system. No, did not want that. So it varied from, oh my God, safety's here, to run for the hills. You just never knew.
Two things I want to cover with that would be the first part being we kind of talked about how the foster home environment has to be that nurturing and loving one. Because from my personal experience away from law enforcement, I know that there are a lot out there that are looking for that state check.
Absolutely.
They're looking
right.
to
Absolutely, yes.
fill the house. Yeah. And they're not providing that nurturing environment. And that's a big reason why kids don't want to be there.
Yes.
The other thing that I kind of wanted to cover, just based on what you said, was I wonder how much of it becomes or is a generational thing. When you have adults telling them law enforcement is not good people, and then law enforcement comes in and takes them away, how much does that perpetuate itself? That was a really cool set of episodes. That was a two-parter where we got to just really expand upon our personal experiences and ask some really tough questions. And obviously Dr. Dave there with that amazing voice brought in some great insight and kind of answered some of those questions for us. But if you don't like listening to his voice, you got something wrong with you. Anyway, I cannot thank the Shield Within enough for going through that with me and being able to convey that information out to the public. Obviously, we're going to continue working with the Shield Within just like we do some other podcasts, which you may or may not hear in this episode. But we're going to continue to collaborate with them, continue to put a good message out. An important part of that is the work they're doing over there, Mark the Cop and the Shield Within, with mental health and first responders. I encourage you to go over and listen to their episodes. They have their own unique take on everything and just doing some important work. Now, if you do go back to listen to those episodes, it's like I said, it's a two-parter, and they're both about an hour long. So make sure you have some time to sit down and listen to those, and maybe, just maybe, have a box of tissues, because it gets it pulls on the heartstrings. I'll admit that it pulls on the heartstrings a little bit. But yes, make sure you have those tissues, and then after that, make sure you have a roll of toilet paper. Why? Why toilet paper? Well, because the next episode that we dove into was called A Shit Show.
For the first time, is there's a lot more to be made in the sex industry than there is because this was a $1 million home, and when you walked into the living room, there was this huge, like almost like a front lobby desk, and it was just solid screens and shit. And for whatever reason, the officer in charge of that particular scene decided to send me to the master bedroom of the owner of the house. Motherfucker. I get in there, and I'm looking around, and I'm finding all kinds of delightful things in the bedroom of this woman that runs a multi-million-dollar escort service. And there's a briefcase next to the bed. And I think, maybe there's a black book in there. Maybe there's some information on clients, right? Let's see if we can't dig that out. So I crack open the briefcase. And my mind did not register what the fuck I was looking at first. Because the first thing that I see is what looks to be an adult version of a child's Halloween cow costume. And this was a high-dollar costume because it had perfectly shaped fucking rubber udders on the front. So the next thing that I notice is I'm at this costume going, what the fuck have I got myself into? And I noticed that the udders are pierced.
Sure.
They pierced the udders. Boy, they told me this job was going to be front row seat to the greatest show on earth, but I cannot believe I'm getting paid to see this shit. And so I pull the out, and I'm thinking that's going to be the weirdness. No. There was, let's see if I can use my arm. There was a black dildo.
Why is it always
there? And I'm just like, oh my god. So yeah, that was fun. You never know what you're gonna see.
Well, here's the thing: you're not officially out of the rookie stage until you've been on a drug search warrant, and it's not a drug search warrant until you find the sex toys somewhere in that house. Usually, a floppy dildo or a homemade pocket vagina. Yeah.
Meth is in there somewhere. You just gotta know where to look.
Yep. Now, Swagger and I had something like that with my canine, where we had that car. I think we've referenced it before in the show, but we had a car stopped and we searched the inside of the car and found normal like drug type stuff. We go to pop the trunk, and the trunk is full of. I mean, there had to have been 100 dildos in the back of this trunk, and the owner of the car told us that it was all about like she was giving parties where she was selling these things, but a lot of them were not in the packaging. And yeah, I'm just glad I was wearing gloves that day is all.
Yeah, gloves are important.
Yes. Yes. Gloves are the number one tool any police officer can have.
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to give you one more, and then I'm going to turn it over. I wish actually I could tell you that this was my story, but it's not. I was there. I worked in Harker Heights. So for anybody familiar with the Killeen Fort Hood area, that's like the mini Sodom and Gomorrah to Austin. Everybody want to get fucked up to go to Austin to have to drive back, they would go to Harker Heights. And so there was a particular bar in my city, and we knew that they were prostituting out of the bar. It was a Korean-owned bar. The guy was Caucasian, the wife was Korean, and they were both alcoholics. I mean, we knew that. We were constantly getting calls for them fighting and drunk and all that good kind of stuff. So, my buddy, I'm going to put his name out there just because, who knows, he might be listening, Jerry Duggar. Jerry Duggar calls me. He pulls this person over, and I recognize, as soon as he starts running the place in the DLs, I recognize the name, and but I'm on another call, and he's good to go. So we'll get back to the department, and he says, Erica, you're not going to believe what this crazy bitch did or said. And I said, please do tell. I need some entertainment. So he pulled her over for suspicion of drunk driving, and he gets her out of the car, and it gets to a point, the FSTs, and he realizes it's probably going to be a good arrest. He goes ahead and as he's arresting her, he's explaining that he's going to transport her to the Killeen Police Department so that she can blow into the intoxilizer to determine the alcohol content. And this was her response. Can I quote?
Yeah, have at it.
Me no blow, me manager. That's serious. I don't blow. I'm the manager. My girls blow.
Oh, we just found the #1 clip for this video, or for this episode, and we released it on social media.
Two of them that I can think of off the top.
Me no blow, me manager. Well, me no blow, me host.
Well, that's Earth, where that your integrity is in doubt.
That is great. That is awesome. We had a couple of different massage parlors in town that we were pretty sure right off the bat were rub and tug massage parlors. Really? And apparently the way that they caught the one was the neighboring agency did a prostitution sting, and they caught this guy who was willing to work as a CI. And so his job as a CI was literally to go into this massage parlor and get a happy ending while he was wired the whole time. And according to our lieutenant, he was a screamer, I guess is the best way to put it.
Oh, God.
So when it went to court, the jury had to hear him getting a happy ending. Just going, ah! Oh, goodness. I challenge you to find another podcast out there that talks about screamers. I think that we're the only show out there that can offer a story about a confidential informant in front of a jury screaming out loud as they reach the zenith of pleasure. You're not going to find it anywhere else. Now for a very crappy segue, as we talk about the zenith of things. If you want to reach the zenith of your potential when it comes to working out, when it comes to mind and body, you may need some assistance with a supplement or 2 or 3. Maybe you need some protein, maybe you need some pre-workout, maybe you need some fat-burning pills, any one of those things really. And I've got the place for you to go. Millicor.com offers a whole line of supplements. Can be user chosen, or they can have some bundles and packages that you can look into where you can get all the things you need to fuel your workout, to make sure that you're getting the most out of your workout. And most importantly, they are a first responder company. They obviously focus on military and law enforcement, but they offer things to firefighters and EMTs as well. If you head over to our website, spinningourgears.com, and you click the sponsor link, you can then get another link that goes to Millicor. And with that link, you will be provided a percentage off of your order because they are a sponsor of ours. So please go to spinningourgears.com, click that sponsor link, and then click on Millicor and look at all of the amazing supplements they have for first responders by first responders. All right, we are going to get into the next clip, which takes us to another guest this time from Boston. We kind of get back to a previous topic we talked about when it comes to Alcoholics Anonymous and dealing with substances as a first responder. And we talked to Brian, who has his own unique experience, and he and Erica happen to know one another, so we brought him on the show, and we had a good time.
I did a unit deployment to Mount Fuji for 4 months, and then Okinawa, Japan for 2 months. And I was out of the Marine Corps. Yeah, I wanted to be a police officer. I knew what I was going to do, but all my time in the Marine Corps was whatever we were going to do. We did it on the week, and we did it on the weekend. We were in a great location. So I was a kid from Jersey City, man. I didn't know anything. We hopped cars and we took buses and trains and went all over from San Diego to Tijuana right before they closed it. And even after they closed it, we still went down to Tijuana. It was just like Philippines and Mexico. I don't know how to explain that, but you can leave that to your imagination. So we ran all over California, and I had a relative who lived out there, and we'd party every weekend. And it was a great life for a 17, 18, 19-year-old person. But in the same time, in phenomenal shape, drinking every day, not worrying about anything. And, reality hit, and I got out of the Marine Corps. So I said, I'm going to be a police officer. I can't wait to be a police officer. So I got out, and I screwed around for a bit, probably I'll say half a year to a year. And I wound up getting a job as a dispatcher. So where I'm located on the Jersey Shore, to be on a job down here, you got to get your foot in the door somehow. So it's like a dispatcher or a special officer we have down here. We have a lot of special officers that aren't regular officers, but they carry and have the same police power. So that was my step into getting it done. I worked for a couple of different departments, and then I started working for the department that I got hired as a Class 2 special, which was carrying a gun, having all the regular police and arrest powers. And 3 years later, I became a patrolman. But in those 3 years before that, I worked a desk and I worked the road as a special too. So, I don't have to tell you what that does to you. I had the cape on every day, man. I had that gun, I had that badge. I was the baddest thing that ever walked the land. Or so I thought, right? Doing stuff I shouldn't have been doing, drinking, tinning, trying to get out of stuff when I shouldn't have been doing, driving, and any other thing imaginable. But then I lived across the street from our favorite bar on the beach as a single guy, and I would be able to stumble probably 75 feet, and I say stumble, 75 feet from my door to that bar, and I did that regularly, and it was awesome, right? Living on a beach, bringing people back, everyone hanging out. It was the party house. Of course, there's nothing wrong, hanging out, drinking with my mom and dad, hanging out, going on. I became a PBA delegate, so I got very involved in union stuff. But everything that came along with, we'd do the mini conventions and the main conventions. But I was the guy like, all right, I got to get down there on Sunday and leave on Friday when I really didn't have to. But I was the guy that got the beer. I got the hospitality room set up. I have to get all this done. So I was the control guy about having that getting done. But whatever I did with that, it was all centered around the alcohol for me, all centered around the booze and the party. So that continued. I thought that was, I didn't have enough fun doing that. I joined a pipe band, right? So I play in a police bagpipe band. So just to clarify for those who don't know, I'm a drummer, so I beat it, I don't blow it, right? You can use that. And in the same thing, I became like the band manager and first to practice, last to leave, booze in between, going to everything. You name it, I was the guy, right? Or so I thought. And that led a life of its own. And that wasn't enough. I joined an Irish club down here called the Friendly Sons of the Shillelagh. Now, they're very philanthropic, but they're also very fraternal, and they do a lot of great stuff for the community. But that was my ruse. Honey, I got to join these guys. It was cheap beer. It was like sitting at the VFW, So they were a great organization. I'm still very much affiliated with them. My wife and son play in their pipe band, and they do great things. But at the time, it was just another organization for me to go and drink and hang out at and meet other people. And that wasn't enough. I had to start a Marine Corps League 2 years before I retired. I was able to take some time off my retirement by buying my Marine Corps time back. And it was great. So in New Jersey, there's no age for your retirement as long as you have 25 service years in a pension. So I retired at 45, and I thought I had the world by the balls. And everyone was like, what are you going to do? I was, I don't know, but I know I'm retiring. So I retired 25 years to the day that I could. Because I had all these other things to do now that I was using to mask getting out of the house or doing anything else in my service work, right? And all it was a place for me to go drink. And everything I did was affiliated with that. So I had a son in 1999. He's going to be 25 on Sunday. And, it was the greatest thing that happened to me. But it was so great, I couldn't wait to go out and party, leave my wife in the hospital when I should have stayed and get everyone around. And to this day, I mean, I still did everything that I regret not being there, not being present. I didn't know what that was. I had no idea what that was because, Brian was always about...
That was quite the episode with quite the dude, getting another perspective of someone who went through, trials and tribulations and dealing with alcohol and substance abuse addiction while being a first responder. The dude obviously lived a very full life. That sounded terrible. He's still living. He's been through a lot in his life. But to see someone who made that realization and who woke up and realized can't be all about yourself, especially when you have a family at home and a family at work. And he turned things around for sure, just like Erica has and like so many others have that they've been helping out. So I encourage you to go listen to that episode and just see what he was all about. Listen to his story. Maybe it can help you or help someone that you know here in the near future or, 5-6 years from now. Next, we're going to take a look into another 2-part episode that we had. We spoke to Zana with Honor the Brave. She has a real estate company that gives back to first responders, as well as a podcast that talks about thriving and getting through tough times when you're living in this first responder world, both as the first responder and as the first responder spouse. Zana, I want to know what came first, the chicken or the egg? Did Honor and the Brave come first, or did the podcast come first, and how did we get there?
Yep, Honor the Brave came first. And so Honor the Brave was honestly born because Jeff was laying in his hospital bed and figuring out what was next. And I was in real estate. And so I was like, the positive, annoying self that I now know was not what he needed at the time, but doing the best I could, was like, why don't you join me in real estate? You could coach the kids. You'll have some freedom and flexibility. And he said, I can't deal with your people. And I get it. Like, he's come to, some real estate conventions, and I'll admit they can be pretty pompous, right? And so totally got it. And he was like, your people's idea of an emergency is, nobody's gun to your head. So why are they calling at 10 o'clock at night about a real estate transaction? Totally got it. That was his perspective. And so I was like, well, yes, I hear that. So why don't we focus on your people? And why don't we figure out a way to give back through this? And none of you trust anyone, but maybe because you have a background in law enforcement, you can trust each other through this. And so that resonated, and that's kind of how it began. At the time, we were still in California, that C word, and local. So he got his real estate license and joined me. And we started giving back to anyone we served, when they were buying or selling a home. Fast forward, one of the many blessings that came from that, what didn't feel like a blessing, was we got clear on what did and didn't matter. And, life is short and there are no promises. And so instead of the if onlys, it was why the heck not? And so we decided to pick our perfect canvas, and we moved our family to Montana, which was definitely something we wouldn't have done had that dark season not occurred. So it was certainly a blessing. And when we got here, we were, realizing that like us, so many folks were moving wherever they may be moving throughout the country, lateraling, whatnot, retiring. How could we impact them and give back with what we were doing on a bigger scale? And so we went nationwide in 2017 after moving here, through referral partnerships with realtors. And so we just started aligning with amazing realtors who share that passion for serving those who serve. And that matters to us too, right? And I'm sure it matters to you too. Like, you don't want to do business with someone who doesn't back what you're doing every day. So that didn't used to be such a thing, but it's a thing now, right? And so we wanted to make sure we were finding the right people to be in alignment with, to do business with. And the first great way to vet that is if they're willing to give up a part of their commission to do it, right? That says a lot. And so they, through that, they give up a part of their commission for us to provide Brave benefits. And what that looks like is 10% back to the client, to you guys, as a thank you for your service. In addition to that, they donate 5% to a charity that you guys choose. The only requirement for the charity is it does impact first responders or military in some capacity. And I have to tell you, that's been a really blessing too, because we were both jaded on the ugliness and the negativity towards particularly law enforcement. And through this, I've been reminded, yeah, what you're dealing with on the street and what's in the news every day, it's pretty ugly. But there are so many people that appreciate all that you guys do and are doing great things to give back. And so getting to do this made me see the good again in so many people. And then we have an active duty Marine who builds us these beautiful handmade wooden flags. We do the thin blue line, thin red line, American flag, and we present those at closing. And we just are committed to making an experience of appreciation through this process and a ripple effect with the charity donation and making sure you're doing business with people that, you know, you want to be doing business with. So that came before the podcast. And I primarily run it now. Jeff is what I call the pretty face, because he has had other opportunities and so run with that. And so he comes with me to events, but the day-to-day of Honor the Brave is me. And then he's gotten into some other things, which has been yet another blessing. Fast forward, the podcast was on my heart for a long time because I want to give people hope, because when you're in it, it's hard to find the hope, and nobody talks about the hard, right? You see the highlight reels. So I want to talk about the hard, and we look like a fairy tale if you just look at our social media, right? And we're high school sweethearts and have 2 great kids and football players and all the things, right? We're all American dream. Well, yes, but the all American dream is freaking hard. And so I want to remind people that, you know, the highlight reel is a highlight reel, but there's a lot of hard that gets there, and I want everyone to know what's possible when you can navigate that hard.
It's always awesome getting to get a different perspective on things and seeing views and just what others are going through who are connected to first responders, but not exactly, you know, carrying that badge or wearing that helmet or driving that rig around town. Obviously, our spouses go through just as much as we do from a different angle, a different side of things. And so getting to sit down with Zana and talk to her about all of the things that her and her family have gone through and seeing them succeed on the other side of that and all of the hard work they've put in to get there is very, very cool. I do encourage you to go over to Honor the Brave or to Victim Survivor Thriver and check out all the cool things they have going on over there. I thought that was a great episode that we had, and they've doing some very cool things as well. Now, the next clip that we're going to bring to you was from an episode where we talked to another friend of Erica's, Brian. He is part of the High Speed Chicken Feed podcast. This episode was really, really good, and we talked about a lot of cool stuff. Brian is just an awesome dude all the way around. For some reason, we had technology issues basically about 5 minutes in through the end of it that we had to try to overcome. And because of these issues, I wasn't able to get the longest clip from this episode. So this is going to be another shorter clip, give you a little bit of a taste of what that episode was like. But you can go back. Dogs are barking in the background. Apparently, we're going to have more issues talking about this episode because that's just the way things are going. So I encourage you to go listen to the whole episode. But here's a real quick clip of what we had. I got to jump in super quick here because you mentioned how you were on pain pills. I kind of want to know the backstory with that, just because I think there's a lot of, especially rookies out there, who don't realize how quickly and how easily it is to get hooked on those things and how that happens.
Sure. And that's a whole story in and of itself. Like I said, there was a lot of stuff that happened on duty, but, you know, we still live life when we're not on duty, and things still happen. Mm-hmm. And with me, I just had a series of unfortunate events in my life. In October of 2001, I was straight out of the academy and still on patrol training, not patrol training, still on FTO status at the jail, when I had to have 4 wisdom teeth cut out, and the then fiance, now ex-wife, was picking me up from the oral surgeon's office and was driving me home, and I was just out of it from all that anesthesia. And I caused her to run a red light. We got T-boned on both sides, and I broke my back the first time. It was a compression fracture to the L2 vertebrae. It didn't really... I mean, they gave me pain pills for that. I was in the hospital for about 8 days, had to wear a back brace. But it didn't become a problem at that time. You know, I was still green. I still hadn't really experienced much and wasn't trying to escape anything. And again, I was a teetotaler back then. I didn't have any issues. I didn't even drink. Really, really enjoying it. Really loving it. Finding purpose again. Finding, I guess, some sense of identity again, but also a huge sense of purpose in helping folks that were like me. And as far as that person that was like me, you know, the backstory there, the short version of that, I'd always wanted to be a cop, and I set my sights towards that goal and became a law enforcement officer in July of 2001. I worked for the Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office in Shreveport, Louisiana. I ended up spending about 16 and a half years with them. And the short version of that story, again, is career was going great. Some really bad things happened, and PTS began to set in. And I went from being an absolute teetotaler, never having been drunk until I was 26 years old, to somebody that was a raging alcoholic, pain pill addict, angry all the time, and burned my career absolutely to the ground. Along with just about everything else in my life. And eventually I was also numbing out with just a lot of marijuana. And then when I found my rock bottom in August of 2020, I decided to get help and checked in at Warrior's Heart as a patient and as a client August 18th of 2020 at 1800 hours. And that's how I came to know Erica in a roundabout way.
Such a cool dude with a very cool story to tell. Their podcast is also another great podcast. This apparently is just going to be a mashup of every other person's podcast as well as ours, but he is a cool dude. We're going to have him back on again, hopefully sooner rather than later, so that we can try to, I guess, vindicate, get a little redemption for all the technology issues that we had, because he had a very awesome story. He had just a wealth of knowledge behind him. We talked about a lot of cool things. We talked about his redemption arc, and then obviously the podcast that he has with some of his buddies over there. So we're going to try to get him on sooner rather than later and redeem ourselves and give you guys some more awesome content. Now, we're going to jump into another clip here. Obviously, it's the mashup. We do a bunch of clips. But this is another clip going into having some guests on the show, and we went back to our roots. You know that it wouldn't be an SOG season if we didn't bring these guys on the podcast. I think you know who it is. I won't announce it. I'll just let you dive into it and listen. And I think you guys are going to enjoy.
I mean, from my last one, we like tagged in. I was like, all right, now you do him. And like, then he was like, oh, now you do him. And I was like, oh, okay.
Like WWE when he stood in the corner and held the ropes up.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, we played tummy sticks.
Okay.
You know.
Well, let's overcorrect here and get back on topic. The last time we got together, Nick and Mark, we very briefly we did a lot of blow. There was a lot of blowing. That's not true. If the FBI is listening, that's not true.
Kidding.
Oh, they are.
Social Comedy Act.
The IACP is listening.
No.
Blue No Help is listening.
Yeah.
Everybody's listening.
Well, spell my name right. Anyway.
There's a book out there, for Christ's sake. Just
that's
look at
right.
It's in the background. Just
right
zoom
there.
in.
I see that. I was going to address that soon. Don't worry.
See, where's it at? Here. It's right over my shoulder.
Yes.
During the last episode, though, it was just a very brief comment how we talked about, you know, when you're younger in the profession and you get injured and you're afraid to mention it, you're afraid to bring it up. And I know that we've all got stories, so I thought, fuck it, let's get together and tell our stories of getting hurt on the job.
Oh, man.
Nick, I know that you've got a big one with a cruiser. I think I've heard it before, but I think we'll start off with you. And
I thought you meant that massive mug he just got to chug.
Well, there's that too. There's that too. He's got several brain injuries, but I'm talking about the one in the car.
I do. I mean, my major one was just before I got promoted to sergeant. middle of the day. I was going lights and siren. It was a violent domestic involving a weapon. Old town, Alexandria, which is very, very congested. Every time I used to run code, I never flew through intersections. I wasn't one of those guys. So, like, figure a very busy street. I would stop at every corner, look both ways, make sure I made eye contact, and then proceed. So it's kind of like fast stop, kind of like how I, do things. And I come to this intersection. Yeah, I come to this intersection. I got the red light, so I know I got to be extra cautious. Make eye contact on the left, make eye contact on the right, and see an ambulance who stops for me. I go to proceed through. The next thing I know, I wake up and I'm getting cut out of the car.
Oh, my goodness.
And what had happened was I had cleared almost through the intersection, and a lady went around the ambulance, and she tapped the passenger side, which spun the car around and wrapped around a telephone pole. Mm-mm. And the reason why I went out was I had a Dodge Charger at the time, brand spanking new. And I hit my head on the shotgun, and I was out. And I remember Mike, my first co-host for the Roll Call Room, was there when they were cutting me out. And I remember getting loaded on the gurney, and I couldn't feel my legs, which scared the shit out of scared me. I was like, I can't feel my legs. And they were like, oh, you're fine. And I could hear them talking to each other behind me. Well, I could hear them behind me being like, he's not reacting to whatever they call it, like when they poke your feet and stuff. And I could hear you. Like, I could fucking hear you. And then we're rushing to the hospital, and then we get in there, and it was like the show ER. I've never been involved in that. Like, I've never been rolled into an ER, like a trauma center. And it's a 50 million fucking people asking you questions. Can you feel this? How does this feel? And then they turn me over to the side, and next thing I know, I have a finger in me because they were checking for internal bleeding because my stomach apparently was ascended. And then, they did all these tests and everything, and then they wheeled me into a room, and they're like, you're going to be fine. And I was like, I can't feel my legs. And they were like, yeah, you slipped 4, 5, and 6 of your vertebrae. You might need surgery eventually. That's pushing down on your nerves, which makes your feet, you can't feel your legs. And I will tell you, out of all of that, there was a deputy chief who was forced out, which sounds very familiar to us. It was a female deputy chief. She was my lieutenant, then she got promoted to captain, and then from captain, deputy chief. She stayed with me the whole entire time. She stayed with me and my wife. When they released me, she dressed me. Like, she legit, put my clothes on me. And I remember I had loved her before that, but that solidified, true leadership.
Yeah.
Chief came and did his, 5-minute.
How's it going, brother?
Hey, Sal, how are you? And you're like, Sal? Who the fuck is Sal? And you're like, you doing good, Jeffrey? And you're like, you just said Sal 5 seconds. Like, do you need a name tag or something? It's just no fucking connection whatsoever, But that was my big one. I mean, there were other major ones. I've retired, we talked about it on the Roll Call Room. I've retired a lot of cruisers. Yeah. So that was my major one. Aside from zipping up my pee-pee one time on duty.
Beans above the Franks?
Yeah, and then you have to work the whole day like that?
Yeah.
It was weird.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned how, and my story is kind of the same way, but you talked about, the doctors, you can fucking hear them talking.
Yeah.
For all of the accolades that doctors and nurses get, and don't get me wrong, I love you guys, but for all the accolades they get, they are the worst human service people I think I know, especially when it comes to communication. They don't tell you shit while you're sitting there panicking.
Yeah. No, they don't. They didn't communicate at all. They weren't like, Nick, you're going to be all right. Don't worry. They were They were strictly business.
Yes.
They were I could hear them talking his stomach is ascended. We're not getting there was some medical jargon that I had heard before by bringing victims in from car accidents, and it was making me even more nervous because I could hear them.
Yeah.
And you can't see. They got this collar on you. You're looking straight up. All you see is this bright white light, and occasionally a face peeks over. a couple of them had bad breath, so it was like, it was like, and then it was like, ooh, feels good.
Step off, please.
Yeah, and then it was like, ooh, that feels good. 2 more, please.
Why am I erect down here?
Yeah, I was like, whoa.
Now
they rip everything off too, man.
Right.
That was embarrassing too. Like they cut all your shit off, all your shit off. Like there's
they take your clothes off, not cut your shit off.
No,
a little bit of both. If you ask them to, they'll do whatever you want.
Yeah, I was like, I need a sponge.
That's right. It would not be a Spinning Our Gears season if we didn't bring on the OGs, the Roll Call Room with Mark the Cop from The Shield Within. Talking about injuries, having some good times. We touched on a lot of different things there. Had a lot of laughs. Again, if you guys know this podcast, you know that we wouldn't be around if it wasn't for the Roll Call Room. So we have to bring them on at least once a year, if not more. And obviously we will do that again in Season 4. We already have some things planned. It's going to be a good time, I promise you. A lot more laughs, a lot more entertainment, and just some good content, I think. Getting them on is... we always hear positive feedback, I guess is what I'm getting at. So we went from talking to the Roll Call Room, talking about injuries, having a good time and a lot of laughs, to then Kenyon and I having an episode where we talked about the things that we wish our spouses knew. It was a light-hearted episode, but it was more of a serious topic, I guess, that we went into. And I think it was very important because it kind of answers a lot of those questions that sometimes don't even really get asked that need to. So give it a listen and see what you think.
So, like, it's... I don't know how, like... I don't know that we're necessarily meant, like, as like, legitimately, as human beings, to have our attention in so many places.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, like, if you think about it, some people can live by themselves, completely be loners, and be fine with it. But studies have shown the majority of people that if they go into a loner state, they have a greater possibility of developing things like depression and anxiety and things like that. So I would have to imagine things like not PTSD, ADHD could very absolutely be acquired as opposed to born. I'm sure people are born with it, but it's got to be acquired.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Add to that all the stimulation that we have nowadays. You know, the dopamine hits of social media.
Tased and confused on TikTok.
Tased and confused. I mean, all that you can scroll through all of my videos and all of that dopamine, right? I find it funny sometimes. My kind of like how some of my personal views kind of clash with some of the things that I honestly that I do. Like we don't let our kids get on like phones with few exceptions. Like when we do road trips or when we go on like vacation, if we're going on an airplane, they can play on their phone. If we're going on a long drive in the car, they can play on a phone. Otherwise, they have a set amount of like TV time. They have their show time, and that's all kind of all the screen time that they get. And we're like, we talk about we're not going to let them have phones until they are, maybe 15, 16, and even then it's going to be like the dumb phone, right?
Yeah.
So
if those are even still around,
they're going to be able to, if they're even still around, but something that's only going to allow them to like text or call or just basic communication.
Yeah.
Because I think our brains are so susceptible to that kind of stuff, and the youth are so malleable in that way.
Yeah.
And then I go on TikTok and I make these videos that
trying to corrupt the youth.
trying to corrupt everyone. Oh no. Knocked over your camera.
It is a complete mess over here. Welcome to my life. Give me your next one, Kenyon.
All right, let me pull it up. I got my list here. So the next one is it was kind of along the lines of I guess it's kind of what you said. It was that I was going to be gone a lot.
Yeah.
And I guess the way that I look at it in this, when I was thinking about this, is that it seems like we are gone more than like your regular work week, and I don't know why that is, and it might be just because of the nature of what we do. My wife talks about how every time I'm out on a shift, it seems like forever.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of goes along the lines of because you're always afraid of getting that call.
Mm-hmm.
As a spouse, right? You're afraid of getting that call, and excuse me, I get, I find comfort in the statistics that I have an 81% chance of surviving if I get shot by a handgun. Odds are, odds are if I'm in an officer involved shooting, I'm gonna survive. That's the odds, right? But she doesn't want me getting shot at all, of course.
Right.
And I don't. I like the number of holes that are in me right now. I don't want any more.
Yeah.
And but that's so I think that I might, if I were to go back to, I'd rephrase it to see it's going to seem like I'm gone a lot longer than I actually am.
Yeah. Just that fear and that adrenaline is definitely part of it. I think also the nature of the beast, like the fact that we can get called away even on our time off at any point. And then for the most part, for like your first, 10, 15 years, you're going to be either on that evening swing shift or the overnight shift where your hours don't coincide with what normal life is. And so, especially if you're on that evening shift, you can't do much throughout the day because you have to work that day. So it's going to seem like you're gone even when you're already there.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it effectively the block that you are scheduled for is dedicated to your work.
Mm-hmm.
It's your time. Like that it is what it is. But, because I get into the mentality and it's hard to get out too, even during my work week when I get home. Right now I'm on the swing shift, so I get home around 2:00 or, after whatever, I get off shift at 2:00 and then I go home and go to bed. And I'm up at 10,
Yeah.
But then the rest of my day, I am thinking about going back to work. I'm prepping in my head to go back into work.
Yeah.
Right. And just, I want to be there. I want to be present. I'm doing my best to be that way. But, I think that it's just a necessarily the Florida heat's getting to me, man. You necessarily have to be in that mentality, because if you're not, you may fall out of it. I've gone on shifts. Usually it's after like a long weekend or something, or a vacation where you get back on and you're just off.
Yeah.
Your radio traffic, you're stumbling on with your traffic stops, or maybe you forget. We have a specific way that you call out, license plate, location, and description of vehicle, and maybe you mix up the order, or what happens to me a lot is I forget to ask or confirm people's addresses.
Sure.
Like, on their, when I'm out on a call or something, I check their ID, I'm like confirming the address with them, and I'll just forget and I'll skip that.
Yeah.
You just have off days, but like I want to mitigate that by keeping my mindset, my frame of mind in that work mode.
I really enjoyed that episode, getting to sit down with one of our new co-hosts and get their perspective on things, kind of get a feel for, who they are, allowing you guys to kind of pull back the curtain and see who they are and what they're all about. we covered a lot of really serious stuff, important stuff in that episode that I think, whether you're a first responder or a spouse, that would be a great episode to listen to. I think the biggest thing that I pulled away from that is that obviously as first responders, we're terrible about not necessarily letting you inside of our heads, but vocalizing what we're thinking. And although we are thinking it and we think that it's natural and that y'all just automatically know what we're talking about, we need to do a better job of vocalizing that and getting our spouses on the same page. And that's an area where we're failing, not the spouses at all. So I like that episode. I think you guys will too. I do encourage you to go back and listen to it. Like I said, whether you're first responder or a first responder spouse. Next week continued with the serious side of things. This time it was Eric and I who sat down, again getting to kind of peel back that curtain and get to know one of our new co-hosts. But initially it was supposed to be kind of a part 2 to the episode with Kenyon, and we just kind of went with the flow and went with the beat. Ended up being a whole different topic together. And that's kind of the state of law enforcement right now, the state of first responders, and where we've come from, where we're at, and where we need to go. I think you're going to like this one.
I used to work with reached out to me on Facebook, sent me a Facebook friend request, and I'm like, oh my God, I haven't thought about the person in years. So I accepted the request, and he sent me a very long message, and it was a beautiful message. And there was one part in it where he said, I knew the department was sick if I didn't know it before by how they treated you when you left. He said, Erica, they were laughing, they were making fun of you. Now, if I would have been told that 11 years ago, it would have devastated me, because again, this was supposed to be my family,
right?
The thin blue line. This is one of the things that really attracted me into this profession, only to find out it's not always true.
Yeah.
It's not always there. Sometimes the thin blue line is a hell of a lot thinner than it should be. So if I'd have read that 11 years ago, it would have destroyed me. I've done so much work on it at this point that I was like, yeah, I know. I kind of figured that's what was happening. And that was it. Also, 11 years ago, I'd have been reaching out to people. Hey, fucker, I heard you were laughing at my ass.
Yeah.
But I'm in recovery now, and they're not worth my time. So when he said it, I was just like, yeah, I know. I knew they were doing that. But it's interesting how my departure from that police department after 15 years caused, and he wasn't the only one. I had multiple people reach out to me like, I heard what they did to you, Eric. It was wrong. I heard what they did to you. That's fucked up. They were laughing like I couldn't believe how sick the department was. So even my departure, even though it was time, but I was stubborn. I wasn't ready. I didn't want to let go of the career. So I did some things that gave me no other option. But it doesn't hurt anymore.
Yeah.
Right? Because I've been in therapy, I have a solid identity today. I don't have to identify myself as a police officer to feel comfortable in my own skin. I know absolutely who I am. I have purpose in my life. And oddly enough, this I want to make sure we get in. You know, we talk about the thin blue line, family. We lose that when we leave. There were some people that stayed by me. And those people are still very good friends of mine today. We've had some phenomenal conversations about things that used to screw us up while we were both working and on the streets, and how, you know, we either overcome them, or I've had a couple of friends that are still kind of struggling with what happened in that city. So it's a process, right? The environment was not healthy. The good old boy system was still alive and well. I knew that I was not one of the chief's favorites. I've told some stories about shit that I said because I don't have a filter that pissed him off. I had 4 different city policies come out the direct results of my own decisions. And I made my peace with it. Now I get to help my brothers and sisters either recover from that career or get them well enough and healthy, mentally healthy, so that they can continue to work in whatever field they're in. So, yeah, it's changing, but it's not changing quick enough.
Okay, so we're we're gonna turn the wheels here a little bit, because there's a couple different things that I want to talk about just based on your dialogue there. Originally, this episode was going to be expectations versus reality in law enforcement. And it was going to be the follow-up to Kenyon and my episode about what we wish our spouses knew. We thought it was kind of pair well together.
Yes.
I think one of those expectations versus reality you hit right on the head when you talked about how thin the thin blue line is. And I kind of feel like there's enough to go on just based on that. And maybe that's what this episode is going to be now, is talking about how thin that thin blue line is. Because although there are still some of us that really support it, and we're, the ones that are really holding it together, it has gotten so much more thin than people realize. And as Dr. Dave talks about on The Shield Within, it's because of us. We're fucking our own. We're screwing our own. And every time we do that, we're compromising the integrity of that thin blue line.
I've said it for years. We are killing each other from the inside out, not from the outside in. Our biggest worry, it's not liberals.
No.
It's pink hat wearing people. It's not. It's that. It's that. So here's the thing. Because I don't want people listening to this podcast to be like, well, law enforcement sucks. There's really not a thin blue line. So I want to clarify something. I lost my blue line family, the vast majority of them. But here's the cool thing. There is another thin line family out there that is comprised of people like me and people like you and people that have gone through the thick and are now openly talking about it, so that other people can go, okay, you know what? I can do this. If she did it, if he did it, I can do it too. So I have a family now. And when I tell you family, some of these people I've never met in person, and you are one of them. But you'll notice that I refer to people as brother, as sister. There's a whole nother thin line, blue line, and actually it's every color fucking line. Every first responder that has ever served, that struggled, that worked really hard to get themselves back on track and are now well and are using their experiences to help other brothers and sisters, that's family.
Yeah.
People in Canada that are doing the same exact thing that I'm doing. They were in law enforcement in Canada. They then went back to school, and now they are helping other Canadian first responders. And the same thing here in the United States. So if you're struggling with not having that thin blue line family, please know that there's a whole nother thin blue, red, yellow, white, green line out there. And we are a strong community with a strong voice, and we are connecting with each other exponentially.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole nother area of people, of warriors that have had their asses kicked by trauma in the job and childhood shit. They're now passing on what they've learned. Find that tribe. Find your tribe.
Absolutely.
My tribe is a bunch of weirdos, and they know it. We all know it. I'm a weirdo too. We're nerds. We nerd nation. We like, we don't feel like we have to be badasses anymore. We don't have to look like we're badasses. And so we're embracing our inner nerd. It's great. Right? We don't have to.
Wrong with it.
We don't have to maintain that certain image anymore. So that family has become stronger than my thin blue line family ever was.
Yeah.
And I'm blessed that some of the members of that family, that tribe, are all people that I've worked with in the past.
So, you've talked about your story and how your career ended. I think we've told the story several times about our lieutenant who was kind of ceremoniously walked out the door because he wanted mental health help. The one story that I want to talk about is in reference to the patches that I have behind me. For those of you not watching who don't have that capability, I've got kind of a tarp-looking thing with a bunch of different patches on there. And that was not through trading whatsoever. As the story goes, at Icarus, we had a chief of police come in, and after about a month of being there, we got an email that said, hey, there's a bunch of stuff on the back table and roll call. If you guys want it, have at it. Otherwise, I'm going to throw it away. And I saw this box, and it's got... it was a probably 8 by 11 by 8 box full of patches. Wow. And I thought, that's kind of cool. We were thinking about doing my oldest son's room in patches at the time. So I grabbed it and I threw it in my locker, and it sat there until my last day at Icarus. And I'm clearing out my locker and I find this box. And at first I was going to put it back in the roll call. And I thought, no, let's figure something out. I brought it home. After about 6 months of being at my new job, I pulled it back out, and I started looking through it. And what really pissed me off was the fact that I started pulling out some of these patches that were patches that people probably bled for, patches that people definitely sweated for and sacrificed for. These were patches that were probably given to this chief as a thank you for something he did for the department.
And he was just going to dump them.
Yeah. So there was meaning behind these patches. And like I said, it was a big box of these patches, right? It wasn't like he went out and bought them or just found them somewhere. Someone took the time to say, hey, brother, I appreciate you. Here is this patch that I worked my ass off for, that he was just going to throw away if no one took. Yeah. And I feel like that's kind of where we're at right now with that thin blue line. Like, hey, I'll trade patches with you or I'll trade coins with you, but it's a novelty thing. No one takes the time to realize what those mean, what sacrifices went into getting those. The sacrifice of being away from your family every day is part of that sacrifice. So I felt the need to take some of the ones that I kind of felt were cooler and put them, on the wall back here. And then I kind of have a plan for the rest of them where eventually I'm going to get those back to the agencies that they came from. Because I think that they need to have those back. Sometimes in this career field, we seem to get in our own way. And that was pretty much the topic of that last one, talking about how we get in our own way, and we need to kind of open our eyes and realize what we're doing to ourselves and one another, and trying to find that commonality, trying to get back to that thin blue line, that thin red line, the thin green, yellow, whatever color you want to put in there, but realizing that first responders are a brother and a sisterhood, and we need to get back to our roots in a sense, learn from the past, but also kind of get back to those roots, because we're in a state of crisis right now. We're in a different world for sure. And we're only hurting ourselves. We're seeing that in the career field itself, and it's spilling over into our personal lives with mental health and substance abuse and anything related to that. We're having issues in those regards. So it is super important that we get back to our roots. I think you guys will really like that episode if you go back and listen to it. Just an important message that I think a lot of people need to hear. Now, the next clip that I'm bringing you is from another, we consider it a sponsor because they've run a lot of ad space for us on their platform. And I've even kind of joined them as a side gig where I'm a DJ on this radio show on Fridays. We thought it was important to bring them on and get their story and kind of show you guys the connection between us and the Thin Line Rock Station. How did you guys make the connection with your listeners? Because it's not like a typical call in and talk to the DJ's radio station like you hear on FM, AM, but you guys appear to have a really close connection with your listeners. How did you guys create that?
Just being there, it's taken me a very long time. I'm a very private person. I'm an introvert for sure. It took me how long to actually be able to talk on the radio, just to talk, instead of being like, hey, this next song, you know what I mean? So just to be able to get on there and have a discussion with myself, and hopefully, all that reaches people. I put out something, am I the a-hole? I put out an am I the a-hole? Somebody sent in a request, and said, hey, am I the a-hole for this? So I'll read it over the air, and somebody actually left us, some messages on that. They were like, yeah, you're not an a-hole. That kind of communication back and forth is what keeps them hopefully telling their friends and hopefully coming back to us. Because, we do care. That's the thing. We want to see them succeed and survive and, grow. And hopefully we can send some more entertainment and laughter and fun out their way, and then they can send it back to us.
And the anonymity of social media helps. People can send a message without having to call in and be forced to answer a question right back, and they can just send a message, hey, can you play this? Or let me tell you a story about something happening on this shift. Something, and being open to that, and like I said, reading those on air from time to time, or just that communication that's completely off air. We've had those two in the middle of the night of, please help me, I'm going through it. you guys are the only ones I know who are up at 3 a.m. right now because I'm listening to you live on the radio. And being able to sit there and talk to them on the phone for half hour, 45 minutes, and get them through the shift. That helps.
Huge.
Absolutely.
And I kind of heard you alluding to it a little bit earlier. Do you feel like, so the rock station is really beneficial for others. Do you find that it's also beneficial for your own healing process? God knows if we've done more than 61 of these professions, we've got some shit, right?
Yeah.
I definitely believe, yeah. My own personal healing, absolutely. There are songs that I put on there myself that when they come on, I love hearing them, I'm just instantly like, thank you,
Yeah.
So, yeah, there is a deep connection between music and, the mood and whatever,
Yeah, for me, it's something when you have those dreams where you wake up and you're not going back to sleep, PTSD dreams, and it's one of those, I can turn on the radio station, I can go sit down, I can go live and DJ for a little bit and just talk through it, because I'm not going to go to sleep for a couple hours. So I might as well get on there, start talking, and sometimes share those experiences and what it is, and people, again, connect because they go through the same thing.
Right.
Absolutely. So I know Turk is going to want to make sure we get in your information, but I'm hoping we kind of double up on that. If somebody wants to find the Thin Line Rock Station and they want to listen to it, what do they do?
Mm-hmm.
Where do they go?
You can either go to the thinlinerockstation.com or, better yet, download the app on your phone. Just go to your whatever, the Play Store or Google Store or Apple. And
this is one that amazes me. You go to our website, there's a big red button that says click here to listen. And people will still call, email, how do I listen to you guys?
Yeah, there's like 14 ways to listen on our
whole
website.
Page, how to listen, breaks down how to listen on your Alexa app, how to listen on your every type of cell phone. And people will look at that big red button and can't click the big red button.
JJ and James are two very cool dudes over at the Thin Line Rock Station. It was a pleasure having them on, getting to see their perspective and what they've been through, and this cool platform that they provide to first responders, all free of charge, in the Thin Line Rock Station. It's been quite the learning curve and quite the endeavor, but I enjoy getting to go on there every Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern. I encourage you guys to tune in, play some awesome music. We try to get your heart rate up, get your mood up, get you ready for the weekend. It's something very cool that I get to do every week and something I look forward to every week. So I encourage you guys to head over there and on Fridays listen to me, or if you're tired of hearing this voice, tune in whenever you want to. It's the thinlinerockstation.com. Now, the next episode that I'm going to bring to you, I have to give full credit to Mama Turk. This idea was her idea. She brought to me and said, hey, I think this would make a great episode. And it really did. You see, we have go bags for just about anything that you could think of, but we tend to kind of forget about having a go bag for mental health. And that's what we brought you in this one.
Healthy anxiety versus unhealthy anxiety. So this is how 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 works. And you want to do this relatively slow. Now, you can do this in a crowd of people. Trust me, I use this one. This was one of my favorites. So I've literally used it working in a group where I was helping veterans process trauma. As you can imagine, it was a pretty intense group. And so I started doing 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to keep myself grounded in the present so I could do my job correctly. So 5 things you see, 4 things you touch, 3 things you hear, 2 things you smell, 1 thing you taste. Now, don't be like me. The first few times I tried this, it was at the behest of a therapist. I go into session after she's taught me this. She goes, how's it working for you? And I said, I fucking hate it. And she goes, well, what happened? And I said, I was more damn anxious because I couldn't remember. Was it 5 fucking things I was supposed to touch? 4 fucking things I was supposed to see? 3 things I smell? 8 things I taste? I don't know. And she goes, Erica, the order's really not important. And of course, I was a sick puppy then. I'm like, why the fuck didn't you tell me that? Right? But the truth is, it is easier to touch 5 things or see 5 things than it is to imagine tasting 5 things. That's why it's in the order that it's in. Now, here's the cool thing. You can do this in a room full of people. You can do it up in your head if you want to. Nobody has any idea that you're doing it, and it is highly beneficial. Now, like every other healthy coping skill, consistency is key, which means you need to be practicing this when you're sitting watching TV, when you're hanging out with the kids in the backyard. You want it. It's muscle memory. So remember, you didn't start out as a great shot. Somebody took the time to show you the technique on how to shoot properly and gun safety. And then what did we have to do once we got that? We had to practice, right? Because the last thing you want to do is be on a shit show of a call and be like, excuse me, sir, I'm sorry. I can't remember with my retention holster if I rock out and rock back first or I rock back and then rock out. You can't do that. You can't time out with the bad guys. So, it goes back like, minimum 300 of dry fires, just so you have that consistency so that when the shit does hit the fan, that muscle memory kicks in. Healthy coping skills are the same exact way. So I'm going to show you what this looks like in real time. And then if Turk has any questions, and then we'll go into some of the other ones. So I'm literally sitting up in the loft at my house. I see a cow picture behind me. I see the delightful Mr. Turk there on my screen. I see a phone. I see my beautiful visage on this podcast on my phone. And I see a big light that I'm using for podcasts. There you go. 5. Now, 4 things I can touch. I'm a chick. I admit. I got an easy one here, right? But you can do this. You can touch the desk. You can touch your pants. You can rub your arm. It doesn't matter. Just touch 4 things. So I'm touching the desk, touching my arm, touching my chin, and touch my hair. It's 5 things you see, 4 things you touch. 3 things you hear. So if I breathe in, I can hear my breath. And maybe I also hear something, I actually hear the hum of my air conditioner. So there's 2. And because I'm talking, you can also make a small sound under your breath. You can make a clicking sound or whatever you want to do. There's your other options. So 5 things you see, 4 things you touch, 3 things you hear, 2 things you smell. Now this one's fun. I'm actually going to move this up a little bit so y'all can see what I'm doing here. So if you're in your own home, you're probably not going to smell anything unless, maybe your spouse is cooking or something, but you're used to that smell. Even with that, there are ways that so whether it's you're smelling food, whether you're smelling your perfume or your cologne, but here's the other one. This is what people see me do. Let me see if I can do this. This is what people see. Normal, right? We do shit like that all the time. Now, here's what's really going on. Let's see if I can turn around here. It would be rather awkward if I was, I don't know, say in a briefing, and I went, what the fuck are you doing, Umberhagen? Sniffing my palm. Nobody's going to do that. So what's really going on is look, whether we like to admit it or not, everyone has a scent in the palm of their hand. Doesn't mean you're dirty, just means you're human. Your palm has a scent. Trust me on this. You can, even if you don't smell it, a little lick on your palm, and that'll actually bring the scent forward. But what you're doing is you're bringing this down as you're smelling your palm. So that's really what's going on, but all people see me doing is that, right? So 5 things you see, 4 things you touch, 3 things you hear, 2 things you smell. Now, here's the fun one. 1 thing you taste. Clearly, we don't always walk around with food in our hands. And I like food, but I don't always have it available. So I usually encourage people to either think about biting into a lemon or an orange. That's my favorite because right as I'm talking about right now, my salivary glands are activating. That's what we want. We want that grounding, that physical grounding.
Erica coming in there with some tips on grounding, especially when you're dealing with anxiety. The key takeaway there is obviously you got to practice that stuff just like anything else that you do. You got to practice it so that it's actually effective in your mental health go bag so that when it comes time to employ it, you can. When it comes time to maybe teach it, you can. We're very big on the training aspect of things and looking out for one another. It's one of the things that I do on the Thin Line Rock Station every week is I tell everyone we got to do buddy checks. We got to check in on one another and make sure that their mental health is just as good as yours. And if you have those tools and those tips and those tricks in your mental health go bag, you can use those for other people as well. Grounding is a very important thing. We go through some very stressful situations, and you need to have that tool to bring you back to your level. So that episode was very cool. We talked about a lot of I think, good things when it comes to mental health and having that mental health go bag. And again, I got to thank Mama Turk for the idea there. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had that episode. Now, something else that you can put in your mental health go bag is mindfulness and meditation. And that's where I went with the next episode. I got to talk to a very cool guy who I met through the Thin Line Rock Station. He's got his own platform where he talks about mindfulness and meditation and how it relates to the first responder world. I will give you a little bit of a heads up. He's a firefighter. I know. We never had a firefighter on the show before. Figured it first time for everything, right? No, a very cool guy with a very cool message. And I think you guys are going to like this one as well.
Well, it's an interesting distinction you make about what you just said. You said, it's all about the now. Nobody thinks ahead. And you would think somebody like myself would be promoting to live in the now. And there's a difference in how we experience that, though, right? So we say we're living in the now, okay? And here we are doing whatever it is we're doing. Right now, you and I are having this conversation. Hopefully your listeners are engaged with what we're saying. But many of us are trying to distract ourselves from the moment, right? We're always in an effort to distract ourselves from our present thoughts, feelings, or emotions. I mean, how long do you wait in a doctor's office before you grab your phone to distract yourself with something to keep you occupied, right? People are living in the now in a way that is like lighting a match, right? It's not really going to draw any true warmth or fulfillment, okay? It's just a quick burn of a video reel, or that next restaurant you want to go try, or that next series on Netflix, or whatever you're burning at any given time. But very few of us have a grounding, something that gives us purpose, something that gives us fulfillment. And many of us as responders, we were promised that our jobs would do this. But something feels hollow. Something has been lost in our communities throughout the last 20 years or so. And us as responders are beginning to feel it. And as people, we're beginning to feel hollowed out by this constant false nature of digital nonsense coming over our devices constantly, right? So I feel like in a lot of ways, people are just lacking a basic sense of fulfillment, a basic sense of structure within their lives that really gives them purpose. As people's religiosity has gone away, as education has been more and more disrupted, as we've become more and more isolated into our homes, there just isn't that sense of community anymore. And first responders are still having to go out into communities and find it, right? But our communities just seem to be eating themselves alive. And so it's just hard to know where the right path is, where the right direction is. But mindfulness really can give you a moment to consider all the ways in which you're experiencing the world, ways in which you are moving about the world, and almost what it feels like to have a sense of self, and what it feels like to lose a sense of self in a way that constantly keeps you chasing that next match burn. Does this make sense on some level?
Yeah. I was going to ask you, and it's almost going to sound like a terrible pun. I don't mean for it to be that bad. But with all of this regression and this disconnection, what fuels your fire as a firefighter to continue, from a personal level, to continue going out there every day and to continue providing that top-notch service to the community that they deserve?
Well, that's a great question. I've actually been out for quite some time. I injured my right knee back in November on Thanksgiving. My crew and I went out there to have us a little game of football on Thanksgiving morning, and captain was trying to show the young men how to do it, and I snapped my knee. And I've kind of had an extended period of time to consider that question. What is it gonna be like to go back after being demobed as a government entity for so long? I've been able to grow this beard out, and I've never been able to have a beard, right? I mean, firefighters have to have the mask. First thing I said when I got injured is, I'm going to grow a beard for a little while. But when I go back, I think the thing that fuels me more now than ever, what fuels me now more than ever, is just a real connection to not only myself, but the way in which I want to present myself to others. I really enjoy when my guys come and ask me questions. And not even the questions that you would be expected to be asked as a captain, like, how do you pull this hose, or how do you do this maneuver, right? But they ask me questions about their families, and they ask me questions about their careers, and they ask me questions about their loved ones. And I've always believed that if you can make a good man, you can easily make a good fireman, right? I've seen plenty of unit men who were so disrupted in their personal lives that they couldn't even do the basic skills of answering the call and providing a good service, right? But I've seen plenty of out-of-shape firefighters, quote, out-of-shape firefighters, who are just the best bedside mannerists, you know? And the community members just love them, right? So I think there's a balance to all of it. And I think the thing that fuels me more than anything as a captain is just being able to give quality direction toward young men who are all seeking the same things that we all are, right? A stable career, a good family, maybe some fun experiences to go out and have, and a basic sense of purpose, right? That's what really drives me, and I'm hoping when I go back to be able to get all that connection with my guys back. I miss my crew and I miss my guys.
That was Josh with Foundation Fortified. He's got a really cool platform offering all sorts of tips and tricks and how to be mindful and how to have that kind of, I like to call it Zen, that level. He offers a lot of different grounding techniques and tips. He actually has some videos that he's put out free of charge to go watch and kind of help you get that introduction to mindfulness. Just a real cool dude, getting to talk to him and kind of getting his mindset on where we're at right now as a society. And, you know, obviously with technology and that immediate, I want it now type of thing. He's very, very laid back and on the flip side of that. Now, in that clip, you got to hear him talk about what fuels his fire. That is an unapologetic pun. I figured I had to work it in there with a firefighter, but part of what keeps him going is his role as a leader with his men and women in the department. And I like everything that he talked about in being a leader and helping young men and women get better in the career field. One of the things that he and I briefly got to talk about is something that I am so proud of and I'm so excited about. Some of you may remember that this year I published a book, and it was a goal of mine, and I was able to achieve that. It's an awesome, awesome thing for me. I don't want to brag, but I feel so humbled and honored to have been able to do that and to see the people that have reached out and picked up that book. It's called Imposters on the Throne, Warriors in the Shadows, and it's exposing poor leadership tactics during tough times. It is available over at Amazon. It would mean so much to me if you went over there and checked it out. We have everything from the e-reader version to regular cover and hardcover. If you wouldn't mind at least giving it a look and then maybe picking it up, it would mean the world to me. Something very cool that I was able to do this year, like I said. And little spoiler, maybe pull the curtain back a little bit. We may be looking at part 2 this upcoming year. Maybe. Not sure yet, but maybe. Now, this brings me to the last episode we put out this year, and it was a lot of fun because we kind of got to go back to our OG roots, and it was just me and Swagger sitting down and having a discussion about a bit of a controversial topic, which makes sense because it's me and Swagger, and that's what we like to do. We sat down and we talked about all the things that we would do if we were appointed chief of a police department. If you think outside the box.
Yeah, that's... Obviously, we've talked about that before. That's you doing things outside the box in today's day and age in law enforcement. You have to do. Like if you have somebody who's just going to consistently do something by, just this is the way I've always done it. That's the wrong way of thinking because it's not going to work out well for you at all. So,
yeah, and that's a perfect one to go on. Is you can't live by this is how we've always done it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the next one that I had was it does not matter your title or your rank. You're going to work at least one day on patrol, whether that be overnights or days. Preferably, I would say overnights. Like, that's a different world that if, you're working day shift as a detective office or a detective bureau, you don't remember what it's like being on overnights. So it's important to get that experience. It's also to show that you're no better or any different than the patrol officers.
Yeah, I think being a working chief, especially in a small town, is super important.
Yeah.
Today's day and age of admin chiefs is really, you can't do it anymore. Like there's such a hiring shortage that if you feel like you're going to get into that position because you want to sit behind a desk all day long, you're in the wrong profession. Like go do something else. Everybody's hiring, so you can find something. But I think every department, I don't care what size it is, has to be a working chief. Same thing with like on down, like lieutenants, sergeants, captain, like they all have to get out there and push the beat a little bit. So,
well, and especially at some point, you're going to have to make decisions for those guys. So you should know what it takes to do that job. But to your point, when you've got the Dallas chief who's out there working the streets and providing to his department, you can't, as a department of 5 or less or 10 or less, even 50 or less for like Icarus, you can't have that excuse of it's being too big that you have to be in the office all day long.
Right. I know for certain you're not doing anything of importance, of over importance, for the whole 8 hours of your day. I 100% know for certain you're not doing that.
Right.
So
there's a lot of Zoom calls taking place.
Yeah. There's a lot of circle jerking as well. So.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. What's your next one?
Well, like I said, I didn't write anything down. I just let's just swing this thing. So I'm going off the cuff here, but I think one of those things is making sure that you are, pitching to the city council, the community, the reason you need to have high quality of benefits for your officers, healthcare, any benefit, dental, all that stuff, but then also the time off side of things, making sure that there's a good work-life balance that's taking place. It kind of falls into the cultural thing as well, but making sure that officers who may be working 12-hour shifts, and 84-hour pay periods and so forth, that they're getting enough time off as well, enough rest before turning right back around and pushing the beat again, because your mental health can really go into the shitter when you're not taking care of A, but B, you're also tired because you're sleep deprived and so forth. And we've already talked about this with the mental health side of things, but I think chiefs can kind of, the chiefs and then the leadership can kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Mitigate that a little bit in certain things that they can do that they should be doing. Like any way you can.
Now, it would not be a Spinning Our Gears episode if we did not have somewhat of a cliffhanger, and there is some irony in this last episode. More information to come in season 4. That's how we like to do it. We never tell you up front. Maybe some things holding us back, but you will have more information on that. It's just, there is quite a bit of irony in the fact that this was our last episode of the year, and stay tuned for that. I think you're going to like it. I will say that this year we set a goal for ourselves to give you all 2 episodes a month, and we were right on track with that up until this last episode. And then life hit us hard, kind of going through some things a little bit here and there, really slowed us down on the back end. Not trying to make an excuse. We just want to let you all know that we have not forgotten about you all. We didn't just pull the plug. Spinning Our Gears is still here, obviously. Some things just happened that prevented us from hopping behind the microphone and giving you more content. We had some cool things planned and just kind of fell through because of, like I said, because of life. But we will be coming back to you in season 4. I promise you, the podcast is not going anywhere. We've got more things planned for you. I wish I could give you 100% when that's going to happen. That's kind of my type A personality. I like to have things planned out, but I don't know if it's going to happen in January like the other seasons have kicked off. It might be a little bit later. We got some things to get through on the back side of everything, but we definitely have season 4 planned for you coming soon. It's going to be an awesome time. I don't like to give you all the cliffhangers, but you're going to like what's coming forward, and some things are going to be reconnected. It's so hard to say without being able to come out and say it, but we have a lot of cool things planned. Season 4 is going to be just as awesome as Season 3 was. I will say that it's probably not going to be 2 a month. We might kind of bring it back to 1 a month, maybe even a little bit less than that, just because schedules and family and things that are going on. Again, you guys hear that all the time, but it's life, right? And that's what we're going through, is life. But to give you a little bit of a preview, just things, collaboration with other podcasts, maybe some other authors, just some fun things that we're getting involved in that are going to take time, and we want to bring you the best content available, not the most content available. So we do look forward to season 4. It will be coming your way as soon as we possibly can. As we wrap things up, I gotta tell y'all, I love doing this mashup every year, and this year it meant even more to me, not only because of the goals that we set, but also because of those things going on in the background. It was amazing to get to sit back and relive this year of the Spinning Our Gears podcast. You guys have no idea how much y'all fuel our fires, how much you keep us going, and we love being able to do this for you all. One thing, if you have a minute, go over to spinningourgears.com and click that contact us link. We would love to hear from you, hear where you're from, who you are, what part of the first responder world you're part of, and just what you like about the podcast, what you want to see more of. We love hearing from you guys. It means the world to us. So really, that's about it. I don't think I have much more for you. I hope you all enjoyed this episode, reliving Season 3 with me, sitting back, listening to all those clips that we have, and I hope that you are looking forward to Season 4 as much as we are. Additionally, I hope that you all are safe and have an amazing holiday. Know that you have family and friends around you, or at least through this podcast, that are here for you. Please have a good holiday. Be responsible. Don't get yourself in too much trouble. Enjoy the time that you have with family and friends, whether it be on those holidays or whether it be a modified schedule around them because of work. We are here for you at all times. You reach out to us if you need anything. Otherwise, I think that's it. We'll see you in Season 4. Stay safe. Have a happy holidays. Love y'all. We'll get through this together.